All right, college football. Jimmy out along with Paul Stone, breaking it down for you. And let's get right to it. Another winning week for us last week with our best bets here on this Thursday. You will certainly be patient with us with some of the games that we're betting, but these are our favorite plays on the board. And sometimes the higher volume ones are getting so much attention that those lines are baked in pretty good. They're pretty tight. And so I think that reflects it. We look at the high volume games, the games you're going to watch, games you want a little action on, and then we give in our best sides on a Thursday. Paul, let's go to you first. In the Mean Green of North Texas, how about this matchup? North Texas and South Florida combined 9-1 this year. The Mean Green are 5-0. This is a picket in 67. 45 points a game for the Mean Green. And man, their quarterback is having a heck of a season, Paul. Of course, we know about South Florida opening up with the upset against Boise State, another upset against Florida State. Florida, and then getting trounced pretty good by Miami for the third. It was a tough spot for him, and I'm not going to kill South Florida for getting beat by Miami pretty good down in South Florida. But here we go. North Texas picket at 67, Paul.
Yeah, there's certainly a long way to go, Jimmy, but this Friday night American Conference matchup there in Denton, Texas, it pits two teams that are obviously very much still in the college football playoff conversation. Lots going to change between now and Sunday, December 7th, when we see that bracket. But that's the way it stands today. So this is a big game tomorrow. They're billing it as the biggest game in regular season football history there for North Texas. So a huge game for both the Mean Green and the Bulls. And you mentioned South Florida's rousing start to the 2025 season. They opened as a 5.5-point home underdog to Boise. Take care of Boise in grand fashion, beat the Broncos 34-7. Then the next week they travel to the Swamp to play in-state Big Brother Florida. They're getting 18 points. They win that game 18-16. And as you also alluded to, the next week they go to Miami, get beat decisively 49-12. But the Hurricanes just might be the best team in college football at the moment. So we'll excuse that. South Florida 4-1, North Texas undefeated at 5-0. Important to note, North Texas's schedule a walk in the park compared to the Bulls. They hadn't played any of the big boys yet, but they have been impressive, especially on offense. Their third-year head coach, Eric Morris, he played wide receiver for the late Mike Leach at Texas Tech from 2004 through 2008. So not surprising that Morris is an offensive-minded coach, and they like to sling that ball around. I look at, as far as my statistics that I use, I only use games against FBS opponents. Against FBS opponents, they're averaging over 43 points, over 432 yards a game, just very efficient, especially in that passing game. And their first year starting quarterback, Drew Mestamaker, he has put up some big numbers, but Mestamaker, just a very interesting story. He's a guy who started the First Responders Bowl last season for North Texas. His first collegiate start, they lost to Texas State in that game 30-28, but that was his first collegiate start in the first game he had started since the ninth grade B team at Austin Vandergrift High School there in Austin, Texas. He played varsity football, but was a backup throughout his career. I should know the guy's name, but he was backup to a guy who actually went on to play baseball at Baylor, a two-sport athlete there. But Mestamaker, man, he has been spot on, 1,247 yards passing in 5 games so far. He's completed 68% of his throws, 8 yards per attempt, and perhaps most impressively, not only 11 touchdowns, but 0 interceptions to date in 156 pass attempts. So he's taking care of the football, and that certainly has been a big part of North Texas's success. North Texas off of a bye. South Florida, it sounds a little bit odd, but I think maybe, I hate to say that they peaked early in the season, but you win those big games. You beat Boise, you beat Big Brother Florida, you play Miami, Florida. Now you're going to Denton, Texas on a Friday night, and certainly you still have very valid playoff hopes. But I think this game might carry a little bit more meaning for the Mean Green. I think they're going to put their best foot forward. I like North Texas to win this game over South Florida Friday night in Denton.
All right, well, so we got a it's this one will be high volume, because it's one of those Friday night, that limited schedule on ESPN2, 7:30 kickoff Eastern time. So, I watched North Texas extensively against Army, and you go to West Point and beat them. That's a nice win. Army not quite as good as they usually are, but yeah, everybody wants you to take your shots and also protect the ball, but that's a fine line. But he does it both because there's 11 TDs and 0 interceptions. 0 interceptions, but man, he is taking his shots. He is firing the ball. They're an impressive offensive unit. There is no question. So North Texas, the Mean Green. I'll be piggybacking you on that one on Friday night. Again, that one on ESPN2. Log into your Bet Rivers app each week to opt into a 3-pack of college football profit boosts, including a live boost, a same game parlay boost, and a boost to use however you please. See the app or website for more details. All right, Paul, you got your North Texas. Let's get to my pick here, and let's go to the Nebraska in Maryland. Nebraska, the Cornhuskers are 6.5-point favorites at College Park. Nice job by you last week, Paul. Almost cashed that total bet, that head up pick against you, that win total last week, but a loss of 20-0 lead. The Maryland Terrapins, that win total at 4.5 this year. But Maryland does cash the ticket of they were catching the exact same amount, 6.5 last week against Washington. They were up 20-0 and up 20-3 with under 4 minutes to go in the third quarter. But they three it out, and then a six and out, I guess you could say, for Maryland, and it was Damon Williams came alive, 75 yards, 72 yards, and 80 yards, touchdown drives, and they steal the game at College Park, Maryland. But Maryland does cash the ticket. Now Nebraska comes in, and is Nebraska as good as Washington? I don't know about your power ratings, but I tend to think I'm not so sure about that. And think about the Nebraska benefited from Michigan State punt team nightmare. They had a block punt for a TD and a 57-yard punt return for a touchdown. Michigan State was winning in Lincoln last week, 21-14 late in the third quarter, catching double digits. It almost did not cover. They had to bench Childs. And look, they built that lead despite Aiden Childs' back-to-back interceptions on drives in the first half. So 20-point lead. The terms we talked about it, 20-3 late in the third. But maybe the young quarterback and Malik Washington will, kind of keep his foot on the gas a little bit this time. But I think Maryland has got a real chance to beat Nebraska here. I'm not so sure about Washington, Nebraska being any better than Washington, and certainly they had their chances in that game. And it's been a long time. We're far removed from the Big Red being the top program in the country for a nice extended period. We know they have the fan base, but there is it still a Nebraska tax that exists in college football? I think so. Give me the Terrapins at home here, plus 6.5, maybe, and get this win outright to cash that win total over, Paul.
Yeah, I do have my power ratings handy now going forward each week. And Washington, actually, I have them a half a point higher
Yeah.
than Nebraska, which I think is pretty reflective of the industry. I think that's where most people probably have these teams. So very comparable, but I have Washington a half a point higher than the Huskers. For those of us who love college football, Jimmy, there's games each week that perhaps aren't on the network's marquee list of games per se, but that really pique our interest. And this is one of those games in my case. First of all, this marks Nebraska's first true road game of the 2025 season. They played Cincinnati there in
Yeah.
Kansas City, which was, I guess, supposed to be a Cincinnati home game, but it was anything but a home game for the Bearcats. Big Red, nation not having too far to travel to KC, and they showed up in big numbers. So this is their first true road game. Dylan Raiola and the Cornhuskers, are they ready to take another step up? As they try to maybe not recapture all the glory of yesteryear, but at least get more, positively postured in the college football pecking order. And then we have to ask ourselves, how good is Maryland? They came out of the gate undefeated last week, just had a tremendous opportunity to win that game. They're leading 20-0 early in the third quarter. And you mentioned their offensive slowdown down the stretch. That offense just went AWOL, gained only 52 yards in 19 plays on its final 4 drives. So just couldn't do enough offensively to not only put more points on the board, but to keep the ball away from Washington as they made their comeback. But I'm with you here. I haven't played it yet, but I'm going to have to take Maryland again. Uh, and it's just basically comes down to Nebraska's performance on the road and who they've been the last 5 to 10 years. Nebraska, since the beginning of 2021, in true road games, not against the spread, but straight up, the Cornhuskers only 4-15. So they hadn't won a whole lot of football games since 2021 on the road. Maryland's not an easy out. I think I'll go ahead and officially, if it's not too late, I'll go ahead and join you here and take the Terrapins
Come on.
plus 6.5 over the Huskers.
Jump on my back, Paul Stone, because
I'll,
I'm going to jump on your back a little bit later on one of your picks. So don't worry about that. Players who place a qualifying same game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or college football games will receive one standard entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning standard Squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app or website for more details. Let's continue on with one of my picks here, and let's go to South Bend, Indiana. Where did you jump on this line? A lot of people like to bet the Irish games, and because they're a nationally they're the only program that can stay independent and be just fine. That's just as simple as that. They still have carry a lot of weight in the college football game. Not quite as much as they used to, but still an awful lot. And it was 18 at one point, then it was 22 and a half at one point. It fell 21 against Boise State last week. Well, look at this. The closing line last week against Boise State is the same line we have right now at Bet Rivers. The Irish 22 and a half and 60 and a half over and I'm jumping out of order. I'm sorry, Paul. We'll get back to the other game in a second. But the Irish, a couple of things working here. CJ Abrams, the young sophomore quarterback from South Florida, is really, really capable. I'm not so sure if he's going to be back in for Raleigh another year. A lot of interest. He'll have a lot of offers. I think NC State is going to have to pay themselves a little bit in this one. But they should be able to move the football against Notre Dame here. And even Boise State moved the ball a little bit, and they don't have nearly the quarterback that NC State does with CJ Abrams. So Notre Dame, CJ Carr, we're both believers. They're going to score. I get that. But something about me tells me that when the Irish trying to run the table after that 0-2 start, and if they're 10-2, they're going to get in to the college football playoff. They'll be favored in the rest of their games. But one of the tricky spots is next week against USC. It may be just a little bit of a look ahead spot here for the Irish here. I think, again, NC State should score enough to cover this spread. I like the Wolfpack plus 22 and a half.
Yeah, sometimes I think look ahead spots might be over emphasized by handicappers, but I think you hit the nail on the head here with this one. It's one thing when a team has a look ahead game and they're laying, 2.5 to 5.5 points, say. That's a very competitive game. They don't have any room for error. But when you're talking about laying 22.5 points, this is a game where they have a large margin for error, so they can't afford to let the foot off the gas, so to speak. North Carolina, they have shown a really nice offense this year under their true sophomore quarterback, CJ Bailey. They've scored 33 points or more in 4 of their past 5 games. So I think the Wolfpack might be able to put up some points, as you indicated, against an Irish defense that has certainly shown some chinks in its armor to this point. So I think it's a great situation. Situationally, it's a great situation. Taking the underdog when the other team's favored by more than 3 touchdowns, and the underdog has a capable offense facing a Notre Dame team that has not been, top 15 nationally caliber to this point defensively. So I like where you're coming there. I think it's got to be North Carolina State or nothing as the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, perhaps looking forward to that big game next week at home against Southern California.
All right. We talk a lot about the Cody Campbell double T Red Raiders a lot on this show, but in the Big 12, and they are the team to beat. We both agree with that. They're one of the top 5 teams in the country They are on my power ratings. But another team is just kind of hanging around, undefeated right now. That's the BYU Cougars, 5-0. Now they have got an interesting stretch with trips to Tucson this week, Iowa, Ames, Iowa, and then Lubbock, Texas, and then Cincinnati. So the schedule really isn't tough. But this matchup here between BYU and Arizona, these two teams are combined a 9-1 on the season. Current line right now at Bet Rivers is BYU road favorite here, 1.5 and 48 against the Arizona Wildcats. But Paul, you're more interested here in the total in this one.
Yeah, I think a lot of college football sports bettors, especially people who are maybe just getting started, maybe not super, I don't want to use the word sophisticated, but just maybe getting started. They just forget about the totals, and the totals where the limits might not be quite as high at sports books. They certainly will pay just the same as the sides. So I certainly don't turn a blind eye to these opportunities on betting totals when they present themselves. And I think we have one this week in Tucson. Both these teams allowing an average of under 20 points a game on the season so far. BYU's given up 15.3 points a game. Arizona only 18.8 points per game. They also rank high in a number of key defensive statistical categories. Arizona, one of those being yards per play allowed. Arizona only averages allowing 3.9 yards per play. BYU gives up only 4.4 yards per play. Both of those schools rank in the top 15 in that category. And in the spirit of transparency and full disclosure, they haven't played a murderer's row of opposing offenses, so it's not like they're playing Miami and Alabama and those types of teams week in and week out. But those are still solid numbers nonetheless. BYU, they feature a physical, gritty, true freshman quarterback in Bear Bachmeier, and he's the younger brother of Hank Bachmeier. Hank started his collegiate career there at Boise State, played a few seasons in Boise, then transferred to Louisiana Tech, finished his career last year at Wake Forest. So that's Hank's bigger brother. That's Bear's bigger brother, rather. And although Bear didn't play a down at his first stop, this is the second stop in his collegiate career for the true freshman. He actually signed with Stanford out of high school, enrolled there in early January. But when Stanford's then head coach Troy Taylor gets dismissed for allegedly mistreating female staff members, Bear Bachmeier gets out of his letter of intent, ultimately transfers to BYU, and he's been the starting quarterback from day one there for the Cougars. The Cougars have been fairly conservative, as you might expect, with the true freshman quarterback. They're trying to win the game with stout defense, with the running game, with selective passing opportunities. They're not just slinging the ball all over the yard and going vertical and that type of thing, only passing the ball on 42% of their offensive plays. And Bear Bachmeier, watch him on Saturday if you get an opportunity to watch this game. I'm going to put his over and under on slide. He does like to run the football. I'm going to put his over and under on sliding at half.
Half.
0.5.
Yeah.
It's heavily juiced to the under, minus 200. He's not a slider. He's an old time football player. He'll lower the shoulder, lower the boom, initiate the contact. He's fun to watch. A key component of my handicap here is the weather forecast. And I'll be the first to admit, weather forecast, even a couple of days out, can be kind of hit and miss. So you can't just lean on it too heavily. Sometimes you see 100% chance of rain, and it's going to be heavy rain. Even looking at the hour by hour forecast, 48 hours
In
before, and
Tucson.
it doesn't
Wow.
rain at all. But
Wow.
in Tucson, the rain's been on the schedule for about a week now. And look, just before we came on the air, 80% chance of rain Saturday night when the game will be played. Opportunity for heavy thunderstorms. So hopefully, betting the under, that's going to come to fruition. Another thing you have to be concerned about when you bet these totals is it's not like the old days. Games are suspended much more frequently nowadays due to inclement weather. So they might not have even just a driving rainstorm. They could suspend the game for a little bit. But I still, in any case, inclement weather, no inclement weather, I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think BYU is going to be on the road. They're going to try to condense the game, going to play that old fashioned football. I like this BYU Arizona Big 12 matchup to remain under the total of 48 there at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, we still think of BYU and associate with, high flying passing attacks, so much on the cutting edge before their time. Back in the days where they were doing sight adjustments and reads at the line of scrimmage between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and just a really you talk about the Bachmeyers, they're going to be just fine. Some of the things you talked about, once of so many things come to mind, and that is, yeah, they're transferring out of Stanford. Stanford, we talked about one of the weakest Power Four programs, but would the Bachmeyers be still in Palo Alto if they got that $30 million donor, that player donation a year before? And speaking of the Bachmeyers, his older brother, wide receiver Tiger Bachmeyer, who was at Stanford, 23 and 24 as well. He's got he only has 3 receptions this year, but for 23 yards. But that's not what graduated with an undergraduate degree at Stanford in 2.5 years. I mean, Paul, not quite as strong as us academically, but close. And it just, I mean, I don't care how many high school credits Stanford accepted going in. That's a hell. The Bachmeyers are just fine. They're going to be just fine. So it's interesting. And as far as sliding, how many 47 slide, Paul? I mean, he wears a 47 because he was actually a fullback at one point. He's not sliding. So, can he develop enough as a passer? And we'll see. But he's very young, and he's got all the toughness and the leadership skills, and he's going to do what he's supposed to do. And he comes from a lineage, they got some pedigree in that family. Just wonder about not quite the accomplished passer as he may be later on. So, and speaking of college football unders as well, yeah, I'm still smarting from that under in Florida down in the swamp the first time that the Gators went over. What happened to that Texas defense? Everybody wants to talk about Arch. I could not believe how Florida moved the ball against the Texas Longhorns last week. Let's move on to another one of your picks, Paul, and let's go to it. This is where I'm going to jump on your back. Wake Forest traveling to Corvallis, Oregon to take on the 0-6 Oregon State Beavers. We talk about the little 12, and yeah, man, and this is a sad part of all of this shuffling around is that Oregon State and Washington State, they've made it the hill so much steeper for their football programs, their athletic programs in general. So Oregon State actually have outgained their last 2 opponents. They had 9 more first downs and 102 more yards than Appalachian State and lost at the end. They had 5 more first downs and 38 more yards in Houston on that Friday night overtime home loss to Willie Fritz. And Willie Fritz in Houston, they can't compete with Texas Tech just yet. But damn it, that's a solid club. So they're right there, 0-6. The other thing is, the other losses, nothing to be ashamed of, huh? Oregon, Texas Tech, easily top 5 teams in the country. Fresno's not bad. California with Pungatella as well. I'm sorry, second Polatella. And is Wake Forest drained after 2 wire jobs against G Tech and V Tech? That's right, against Georgia Tech in overtime, where the Demon Deacons, Georgia Tech scored in their first possession overtime. They score in the first play, go for 2, and it comes up short. And then they lose at the very end against Virginia Tech. And now they travel from Winston-Salem to Corvallis, Oregon. I like this spot for the 0-6 Beavers. I know you do as well. It's one of your official plays, Paul.
Yeah, I want to get back. You were talking about Tiger Bachmeyer's academic prowess and comparing ours to his.
No,
And,
I wasn't.
and I'd probably be modest, but this little known fact, I mean, I'm proud of it. I was second in my high school graduating class. The guy who finished ahead of me, he was next to last. So hopefully, if a person doesn't get that, I was really, in truth, I was probably in the bottom. I took a lot of hard courses, but I was in the bottom half of I probably didn't even graduate high school. But anyway, this game here, it's kind of odd. This is the beauty of handicapping. The point spread and situations can be the great equalizer. I'm sitting here recommending a team that is 0-6 on the season, but there are several things situationally and otherwise, I think, that favor Oregon State in this spot, Jimmy. the Beavers are playing, again, full disclosure, like to give as many elements as I can. They're playing for the seventh straight week, so they could be a little bit drained, but they're seeking their first victory. So I don't think that's the case with them. To be fair, and you pointed it out, Oregon State has played a tough schedule to this point. A schedule currently ranked 17th toughest nationally. You mentioned the fact that they played at both Oregon and Texas Tech, two of the better football teams in the nation. Watch out for those Red Raiders. The Beavers, they came close to getting off the schneid a couple of weeks ago, actually led Houston 24-10 early in the fourth quarter, ultimately lost that game 27-24 in overtime. And then this past week, they traveled across the country to Boone, North Carolina to play Appalachian State of the Sun Belt Conference. They fell behind the Mountaineers 17-0 after the first quarter, played pretty well the last three quarters, got back in the game, did lose that game as well, though, 27-23. So they're off back-to-back one-score losses, outgained their opponent in both those games, so they're getting close. One thing that has plagued Oregon State this year is their turnovers. They're turning the ball over an average of 1.7 times per game, which is high. Malik Murphy, their quarterback, has thrown 7 interceptions, but perhaps to their benefit in this game, Wake Forest, in their 4 games against FBS opponents this year, has only garnered 2 takeaways. So Wake Forest's defense is not creating turnovers. If Oregon State, if they could just push the turnover battle here, that would greatly enhance their chances of winning the game. Situationally, you mentioned Wake Forest. They're off back-to-back tough games. They're traveling across 3 time zones to play a non-conference opponent, a winless non-conference opponent at that. And they're also one of those 2 games, the most recent of those last week, the Demon Deacons defeated Virginia Tech in Blacksburg as an away underdog, won that game outright, and now their cast is an away favorite. And I love that spot situationally. I think it's a tough thing to bear there. And I looked this up, research back 25 years since 2001, rather. Wake Forest 12-23-1 as an away favorite against the spread. So they have trouble covering as an away favorite. Plus, I think these guys will play, but they've been banged up. They continue to be banged up. One of those being their primary offensive weapon, running back Damon Claiborne Jr., rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. He is clearly not playing at 100%, nor is their quarterback, Robbie Ashford. He's been kind of in and out of games. He's playing hurt. They could rest him a little bit against Oregon State. They certainly want to win this game to enhance their bowl possibilities, but Claiborne and Ashford certainly for Wake Forest at something less than 100%. This game I think it carries more meaning for Oregon State. They need a victory. They're hungry for a victory. I like the Beavers plus 2.5 over the Demon Deacs Saturday in Corvallis.
All right, I'm on them as well, man. I like this spot a lot for Oregon State against the Demon Deacons, and we can even go back. Now they did have a bye in between, but that weeknight game where they were led in the second half against NC State, and that very suspect defense for the Demon Deacons gave up multiple touchdowns. They could not even cover against the Wolfpack at home. So they've had 3 games in a row. It's kind of draining. I mean, they're right there in sleepy spot here for Oregon State. I think if Oregon State plays at the level they did against Houston, they will be just fine in that spot. Let's get to our last pick of this week. And before we do that, so I'm looking at situational games and a couple angles here. First of all, this deep in the season, game 6 for a lot of these teams, a young quarterback making his first true road start in a hostile environment. You got one of those this weekend, but the thing that's catching me off, and that is a Heinzman, the last minute announced starter for Pitt, who threw for over 300 yards and 4 TDs, no interceptions, and they routed BC. It was one of my picks last week, and I was thinking that Holstein was going to play in that game. But anyway, they route them. They have to go to Doak Campbell, and again, young. But I'm just worried about if Florida State carries over that disappointment from that loss, kind of like Penn State in a close loss against Oregon. let's face it, that was not the same team that played on, again, the whiteout against Oregon to an overtime game that played in the Rose Bowl on Saturday. So kind of cautions me a little bit for that one. And then we're looking about, different spots as well. And so I look at a spot where Ole Miss, I, they, like I said, when I picked them, I had their win total over in our conference previews in the summer. And I said that they may not. They don't have the same team that they had last year, but they might finish with as good of a record, if not even better, and may make it to the playoff. They're a top five ranked right now. I don't think they're a top five team, but that's where they are at this point. Coming off of their win against LSU, and look who they got next week. They are again traveling to Athens, Georgia, to play Georgia. Georgia in a revenge spot. Georgia doesn't get kicked around like they did last year very often in Oxford, Mississippi. But what cautioned me a little bit is that who more than Lane Kiffin acknowledges the point spread as a coach in college football? And so this son of a gun, if he's got a chance, he probably will go out of his way to push it over the number. And we see some things that just didn't happen 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. When a team has a chance to take a knee to end the game, they take a knee. No, you just saw Friday night, in the Charlotte game. It's 21. They're running tempo to get put the line on 28. So I'm worried about that. So in this look ahead spot, this sandwich spot for Ole Miss, what I'm going to do at Bet Rivers is look at the first half line. And I just think this is a possible flat spot for Ole Miss. So the quarterback has been really good. There's no doubt about that. We'll talk about Chambliss making his first true road start next week in Athens. We'll look at that line. I think the look ahead is about 3.5 or 4. Might want to get on that early. I think that might move up. But the thing is here, Washington State plus 20.5. And like Oregon State, the little 12, the Pac-2, whatever you want to call it, um, they they have been a little bit more competitive. One game that sticks out to me, they moved the ball against San Diego State like nobody else has this season. But it's more about the sloppiness, the the look ahead spot, the flat spot, and I could see Ole Miss kicking it into gear in the second half. But in the first half, 20.5, this Ole Miss defense again is not that strong. I mean, this is a team. We saw a team that fired their coach into the season, a third way into the season, fired the coach that had the ball at their 25 with a chance to beat them with 2 minutes to go and turn it over. And that's Arkansas, 41-36, had the ball second down, and they turned it over at the Ole Miss 25. That's how they've accomplished stuff. They're well coached. There's no doubt. Lane Kiffin's got the best winning percentage in the conference since Johnny Vaught. Talked about that a lot. So he is getting the absolute most out of this program, who's never even made an appearance in the Southeastern Conference Championship game. But this, I'm not so sure if they're ready to just pour it on with coming off that win and with a big game in Athens next week. So I'm going to go to the first half and take the Cougs, Wazoo, plus 20.5, which is available right now at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Jimmy, as much as I like and love the story of Trinidad Chambliss, his ascension from Ferris State to the upper rungs of the SEC there at Ole Miss, I'm with you on the Rebels' current national ranking. I mean, they're number 4 in both the major wire service polls, but in power ratings, they're certainly not the number 4 team in the country. A couple of guys that I follow closely and kind of use for comparison's sake, Jeff Sagrin and Kelly Ford, they have Ole Miss number 10. I personally actually have Ole Miss number 11, and I have them 5th in the SEC. So I don't even have them 4th in their own conference. They're a good football team, but I don't think they're necessarily a great football team. And as you mentioned, I mean, this is one of those awkward SEC scheduling spots where Ole Miss is playing a non-conference opponent, an opponent that, regardless of how they frame it and talk about the game, is not going to merit as much of their attention as some of these big-time SEC showdowns that they play each week. So I'm with you. I think you've got a good angle here. Looking at the first half, you might catch Ole Miss sleepwalking a little bit out of the gate, only to hit the gas the second half. And 20.5 is a lot of points. Ole Miss got road trips to Georgia and Oklahoma on deck. So I think you've got a a good angle there, looking at the first half and Washington State getting almost 3 touchdowns.
I could see Washington State moving the ball in this game, against Ole Miss's defense. So we will see. I think I can grab them in that first half. And that's the great thing about Bet Rivers with the sliding scale and buying half points and things like that. Some don't allow you to buy onto the whole point. We love that in college basketball. Especially, but the different menu items. And look, every provider has different options and different strengths and weaknesses, but it's one of the things that we like about Bet Rivers. All right. Well, good luck to everybody. So, and Paul, you finished higher than that. Don't let. I'm not playing golf with Paul Stone. That's what
I
I'm
didn't.
telling you. He is a sandbagging son of a gun. So anyway, we'll be back on to look. We've been on a roll for on our best bets the last couple of Thursdays. Best of luck to all of you guys. We do it each and every Tuesday and Thursday. It's flat out picks, angles, information, analysis here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Ott. Brought to you by Bet Rivers. We'll see you next week.